Namaste, aloha. My name is Janapati Das. Welcome to the Bhagavad Gita as it is class. Please accept my respects, everyone. And let me offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, and my obeisances for Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are going to continue. We were in chapter 14, finishing at text 19. So we're going to pick up from there. So at first we're going to chant a little bit, so please join along. Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Ramine Gaurakaruna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthayate Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Adwaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktarinda. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we had left off from 19 and reading from about the modes of material nature. So text 20. Gunanetan atita yatitya srin dehi deha samud bhavan janmad mrityu jara dukkar vimukto mritam ashnute. Gunan, qualities. Etan, all these. Atita, yatitya, a transcending. Trin, three. Dehi, body. Deha, body. Samud Bhavan, produced of. Janma, birth. Mrityu, death. Jara, old age. Dukyahi, distresses. Vimuktaha, being freed from. Amrityam, nectar. Ashnute, enjoys. So Amrityam, that comes from nectar, like Chaitanya Charitamrityam. So, and we have this word dehi, or deya, right? Like dehino shmin yata dehe. So as the embodied, so that comes from the body, dehino, of being embodied in the body, right? So when the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can even enjoy nectar, even in this life. So once again, it mentions the embodied being, the living entity, the jivatma, who's in the material body, under the influence of the three modes of material nature. But when the embodied being is able to transcend the three modes, they can enjoy the nectar of Krishna consciousness. How can one stay in the transcendental position even in this body in full Krishna consciousness is explained in this verse. The Sanskrit word dehi means embodied. Although one is within this material body, by his advancement in spiritual knowledge, he can be free from the influences of modes of nature. He can enjoy the happiness of spiritual life even in this body, because after leaving this body, he is certainly going to the spiritual sky. But even in this body, he can enjoy spiritual happiness. So that's where Lord Jesus Christ, or actually I believe it was Paul, said that whether in the body or out of the body, one should render service to God. And that is where you can enjoy spiritual happiness, is in the service of God, whether you're in the spiritual world or whether you're in the material world. In other words, devotional service in Krishna consciousness is a sign of liberation from this material entanglement. And this will be explained in the 18th chapter. When one is freed from the influence of the modes of material nature, he enters into devotional service. Arjuna uvacha kair lingaishtin gunanetan netito bhavati parabo kimacharan katam chaitam Tringunan ati vartate. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, kai, by which lingai, symptoms, three, gunan, qualities, etan, all this, atitaha, transcend, bhavati, become, prabho, my lord, kim, what, achara, behavior, katam, what, cha, also, etan, these, three, gunan, qualities, atit vartate, transcend. Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by what symptoms is one known who is transcendental to those modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature? So it's interesting to, what are the symptoms of one who's transcendental to the three gunas, or the three modes, and what is his behavior like? And how does he transcend? How does he do this? That's good questions, very good, intelligent, spiritual questions. In this verse, Arjuna's questions are very appropriate. He wants to know the symptoms of a person who has already transcended the material modes. He first inquires of the symptoms of such a transcendental person. How can one understand that he has already transcended the influence of the modes of material nature? So that's a really good question, actually. How do you know? What are these symptoms that you're going to be experiencing? The second question asks how he lives, what his activities are. So not only what are the symptoms, but what is he doing, and what is his activities, how does he live? Are they regulated or non-regulated? Then Arjuna inquires of the means by which he can attain the transcendental nature. So what do you need to do to get to the status? That is very important. Unless one knows the direct means by which one can be situated always transcendentally, there is no possibility of showing the symptoms. So all these questions put by Arjuna are very important, and the Lord answers them. So these are actually very good and very pertinent questions, because as we've already known, that one cannot know the absolute truth by speculation or fruitive activity, as it's already stated in the Bhagavad Gita. So to try to figure out exactly, how do I do this, is impossible, right? Without a guide, without a guide to say these are what you need to do, because they've already traversed that path. And that's what the meaning of acharya is one who lives by the example or follows in the footsteps of the previous acharyas who've done the same thing with following their own spiritual masters or their acharyas. If you know the way, if there's a person who's been to the oasis in the desert, they know the way out of the maze. You don't just go, I'm just going to kind of figure it out. You have to know somebody, have a guide who's going to guide you to where you need to go. You have to know how to get out of there. And so this is what's going to be explained. Text 22 to 25. Okay, it's a big verse. Here we go. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha Prakasham Cha Pravrityam Cha Moham Eva Cha Pandava Nadveshti Sham Pravrityani Na Navritini Kankshati Udashinavad Ashino Gunaryo Na Vichalyate Guna Vartana iti ivam yo vashtitani nengate samaduka shuka savashtaha samalostama kanchana tola priya priyo dilash tolya nindatma samstuti mana pamanayos tulyas tulyo mitrari Pakshayo Sarva Lamba Parit Yagi Guna Tita Sa Uchyate. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said Prakasham Cha, and illumination. Pravritya Cha, and attachment, Moham, illusion. Eva Cha, also. Pandava, O son of Pandu, na Deveshti, does not hate. Sampravritani, although developed, na Vritani, nor stopped development. Kankshati, desires. Udashinavat, as if neutral. Ashina, situated. Gunai, by the qualities. Yaha, one who, na, never. Vichalyate is agitated. Gunai, the qualities. Vartante is situated. Itamevam, knowing thus. Yaha, one whose. Avatishtani remains. Na, never. Ingate, flickering. Sama, equally. Dukkha, in distress. Shukaha, in happiness. Swashtaha, being situated himself. Shama, equally. Loshta, a lump of earth. Ashama, stone. Kanchana, gold. Tulya, equally disposed. Priya, dear. Apriya, undesirable. Diraha, steadily. Tulya, equally. Ninda, in defamation. Atma samstuhi, in praise of himself. Mana, honor. Apamanayo, dishonor. Tulya, equally. Tulya, equally. Mitra, friend. Ari, enemy. Pakshayo, in party. Sarva, all. Arambaha, endeavor. Parit yadgi, renouncer. Guna atitaha, transcendental to the material modes of nature. Saha, he, uchate, is said to be. Okay, that was 3 verses. Whew. Okay, the Blessed Lord said, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, nor longs for them when they disappear, who is seated like one unconcerned, being situated beyond these material reactions of the modes of nature, who remains firm, knowing that the modes alone are active, who regards alike pleasure and pain, and looks on a clod, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is wise and holds praise and blame to be the same, who is unchanged in honor and dishonor, who treats friend and foe alike, who has abandoned all fruitive undertakings. Such a man is said to have transcended the modes of nature. What an amazing verse, actually. That's pretty amazing, you know. I think that's one that is worth listening to. But it does summarize a lot of what was brought up in the second chapter about the equanimity. And when Srila Prabhupada talks about life being like a seesaw, that there is this balance of when winter and summer seasons come, when happiness and distress comes, when duality is happening, that a person is consistent. Because they understand that as the Jivatma, there is sama, there is equalness, there is equanimity, there is awareness, and that the activities of the body are things that are detached from what the living entity is experiencing, is what is really going on here. So the living entity is like seated on a throne, observing, watching all these things and interacting. Or, you know, if we think of a more modern conception of this, it's like going to a movie. When you go to a movie, you're not in the movie. You're not actually dealing with like the experiences that are going on in this movie. The movie is an illusion because it's created by actors and sets and costumes that create this great illusion that there's a story going on, and that when you're in the movie, you feel like you're sucked into it. You're reacting to the sadness or the scariness or the anger or but in reality, when the movie is over, you know that you are separate from that. You are not that movie, but for that 2 hours or whatever, you're in that movie. So here this is talking about the Jivatma who transcends the modes of material nature. And the modes of material nature are interacting with the Jivatma being present within the field of activity, or the kshetra, right? And they are interacting, they are reacting, and it's just like struggling with the material nature, as it says in chapter 7. You know, the living entity is within all these energies of the gross and the subtle body, and they are reacting to it as if it's them, but it's not, right? They are really separate. But that is where the dhiras, the one who's steady, who is sober, who is consistent, who knows who they are, is not affected by all these things. You know, well, there's gold, that's gold, that's a pile of shit. They're really conceptually the same thing. They're just matter and chemicals rearranged in a different way with a certain kind of attachment. But let's read the purport. So this is a really an amazing question by Arjuna, and one that's very pertinent for us as the spiritual sojourner. Arjuna submitted the 3 different questions, and the Lord answered them one after another. In these verses, Krishna indicates that a person transcendently situated neither envies anyone nor hankers for anything. So there is no envy. There's no envy of, well, I don't have that, or this person's gotten their life better and I'd rather have that. They accept the situation for what it is. When a living entity stays in this material world embodied by the material body, it is to be understood that he is under the control of one of the 3 modes of material nature. And we've discussed this already, how the material nature influences our thoughts. It's in our food, it's in our music, it's everything, right? TV, the way how the day goes on, our energy levels, everything that has to do with this field of activity in this material world that we're in. When he is actually out of the body, then he is out of the clutches of the material modes of nature. But as long as he is not out of the material body, he should be neutral. So we should understand the neutrality. And the neutrality, like what Srila Prabhupada talks about with the eye of the storm, is Krishna. It's like that's our neutrality. We take shelter of Krishna. We don't interact in this activity of this hurricane Otherwise, we're going to get beaten around and whapped around and whatnot. But we take shelter of Krishna. We surrender to Krishna, and that's our neutrality. That's where our grounding place is. That's where we can actually see what's really going on here and not be attached to it. So that's the true renunciation. We're renouncing the material world only by the fact of taking shelter of Krishna, not by physically or some conceptually trying to reject the material world as evil. He should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord so that his identity with the material body will automatically be forgotten. So we don't have to renounce. We don't have to try to give up a bunch of stuff. Those things will naturally fall apart as we take shelter of our source as in service of Krishna. That is where our real life is. That's where our eternal existence is. And it's like coming home, This is why it says go back to Godhead, We are going back to our source. And the things that we've tried to, the other energies that we've tried to conceptualize as being something separate or something that is for our enjoyment as many Krishnas is actually Krishna's. So it's not actually rejecting, but we're using the field of activity in the service of Krishna. That's the point. When one is conscious of the material body, he acts only for sense gratification. But when one transfers the consciousness to Krishna, sense gratification automatically stops. One does not need this material body, and he does not need to accept the dictations of the material body. The qualities of the material modes of the body will act, but as spirit soul, the self is aloof from such activities. How does he become aloof? He does not desire to enjoy the body, nor does he desire to get out of it. So yeah, there is no happiness and distress, I just gotta get, a mukti bhukti kind of thing. Okay, I want to be liberated I want to enjoy this thing, or I want to be liberated from it. It's my body, I just want to get out of my body. No, you're just okay, I got make the best use of the bad bargain, as Bhaktivedanta would say. I've been given this field of activity because I wanted to play Krishna, but now I understand that Krishna is my Lord. Krishna is the source of my happiness. So therefore, let me use my body, let me use my talents, let me use whatever I have. And if for the time being, and I'm in a body that's crapping out, then I'll just keep chanting Krishna's names. I'll keep doing what I can until the body gives out and it's time for me to go home. That's really what's being said here. Or if Krishna wants me to go somewhere else, then that's what I'll do. One does not need this material body. He does not need to accept the dictations of the material body. The qualities of material modes of the body will act, but the spirit soul, the self, is aloof from such activities. How does he become aloof? He does not desire to enjoy the body, nor does he desire to get out of it. Thus, transcendently situated, the devotee becomes automatically free. He need not try to become free from the influence of the modes of material nature. So similarly, when you go to the center of a hurricane, there is no, you're taking shelter in that calmness, that equanimity, that peace of Krishna. You don't have to fight okay, I got to get out of this. I got to, it's when Srila Prabhupada also made this point about trying to hit the burr rabbit, the sticky rabbit. There was a cartoon where they was trying to get rid of this rabbit, and he would punch it, his fist would get stuck, and then if he tried to punch it again, his other fist would get stuck, and he tried to use his foot, and before he knew, it was all stuck on him. And so trying to fight with material nature in this way, I'm going to use the power of my mind to, and I'm going to, I'm going to use it so I don't think about the beautiful body of that woman, and because she's really beautiful and she's just very shapely, and I got to get it out of my mind. So you're just constantly playing that out. No, you just say, okay, Krishna, I realize I have these kinds of situations going on. Krishna, 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 Krishna. Take shelter of Krishna. And then automatically the attraction for Krishna becomes stronger than your attraction for material nature. The next question concerns the dealings of a transcendentally situated person. The material situated person is affected by so-called honor and dishonor offered to the body, but the transcendentally situated person is not affected by such false honor or dishonor. So people honor you, they dishonor you. They're seeing your form, so it's not, whatever. If if people like you, you like you. If they don't like you, they don't like you. He performs his duty in Krishna consciousness and does not mind whether man honors or dishonors him. He accepts things that are favorable for his duty in Krishna consciousness, otherwise he has no necessity of anything material, either a stone or gold. So similarly, whether it's honor and dishonor, whether, because the devotee of Krishna, in a pure devotee, feels lower than the straw in the street anyway. So if somebody's dishonoring them, they feel like they, now, if you're a disciple of that pure devotee, now that would be a different situation where you're protecting your spiritual master and you're staying away from offenses that people make about it. But the spiritual master himself doesn't take offense when people dishonor him. He takes everyone as his dear friend who helps him in his execution of Krishna consciousness, and he does not hate his so-called enemy. He's equally disposed and sees everything on an equal level because he knows perfectly well that he has nothing to do with material existence. Social and political issues do not affect him because he knows the situation of temporal upheavals and disturbances. That's the key point. And even my god brother Acharya Das has said, unless it's something directly in your service of being in politics for some reason, there's no point in putting so much emphasis on the temporary ups and downs and whoever's in power, and this person's in power and that person's in power, that person is good and this person is bad, and I'm going to vote for this person, and all this terrible that people voted for these people, and this person's a fascist or that person's a communist. It's like just so much energy wasted and unnecessary because it's temporary. It is not really necessary to discuss it unless it's something that you have to do directly in your service. He does not attempt anything for his own sake. He can attempt anything for Krishna, but for his personal self he does not attain anything. By such behavior, one becomes actually transcendently situated. Text 26. Mam chayo vyabi chalena bhakti yogena shivate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpete. Mam unto me cha also ya person abhyai chalenya without fail bhakti yogena by devotional service sevate renders service. Sahahi, Gunan, all the modes of material nature. Samatitya, transcending. Itan, all this. Brahma Bhuyaya, to be elevated on the Brahman platform, Kalpate, is considered. Translation, text 26. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Purport. This verse is a reply to Arjuna's third question, what is the means of attaining to the transcendental position? As explained before, the material world is acting under the spell of the modes of material nature. One should not be disturbed by the activities of the modes of nature, instead of putting his consciousness into such activities. He may transfer his consciousness to Krishna activities. So simple and yet so powerful. It's like, why waste your time doing all these things? Okay, I'm going to try to put my consciousness and my energy and my time in trying to manipulate the modes of material nature in some way so that people are more in the mode of goodness or whatever. It's like, no, we just chant Krishna's names. We do the transcendentally good activity, Krishna consciousness, Krishna's activities, Krishna Katha. That is powerful enough to purify and elevate people's consciousness out of the modes of ignorance and modes of passion into the mode of goodness. Krishna activities are known as bhakti yoga, always acting for Krishna. This includes not only Krishna, but his different plenary expansions such as Rama and Narayan. He has innumerable expansions. One who is engaged in the service of any of the forms of Krishna or of his planetary expansions is considered to be transcendently situated. One should also note that all the forms of Krishna are fully transcendental, blissful, full of knowledge, and eternal. Such personalities of Godhead are omnipotent and omniscient, and they possess all transcendental qualities. So if one engages himself in the service of Krishna or his planetary expansions with unfailing determination, although these modes of material nature are very difficult to overcome, he can overcome them easily. Yeah. So in the activities of sadhana bhakti is so powerful that people can overcome, can elevate themselves. So they don't have to externally try to remove things that will naturally become, because that's very difficult to do. People in the modes of ignorance and passion have been doing these things for a long time. They're attached to them, they're seeking their happiness in them. But if they can be drawn out through a higher taste than what they're experiencing, they say, oh, it's like Sri Yajna, what's his name? They brought up the sage, I can't remember his name, I think it's Yajnacharya or something. He was saying that, when I think about sex life after having tasted the sweetness of Krishna consciousness, then I spit at the sex desire that I once was so attracted to, There's so many examples. The Chandravali, I think it was Chandravali, right? I think it was Chandravali or Chitralika, I can't remember her name, but the prostitute that was, I have to look that up, but actually the Brahmin who would go to see the prostitute, and he would go to see her, and he one time almost died going across a raging, storming river. And she said, if you had that much attraction for Krishna as you do to come see me, then you'd be a pure devotee. And he took that to heart. So, this is already explained in the 7th chapter. One who surrenders unto Krishna at once surmounts the influence of the modes of material nature. To be in Krishna consciousness or in devotional service means to acquire the equality of Krishna. The Lord says that his nature is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, and the living entities are part and parcel of the Supreme, as gold particles are part of a gold mine. Thus the living entity's spiritual position is as good as gold, as good as Krishna in quality, not quantity, but quality. The difference in individuality continues. Otherwise, there is no question of bhakti yoga. We can't have bhakti, you can't have a relationship if you are all that. Like the monists say that there is no individuality, there's no jivatma, that there is just, the Brahman energy, right? But there is no, you can't, they say they're claiming to be doing bhakti yoga when they have pictures of altars. There are altar and pictures of different deities that they try to merge into and whatnot, and they try to feign up some devotion. But that's not, we're talking about eternal devotion and eternal relationship. Bhakti yoga is about a relationship, one of being one in will, not being one person, being one in will. So to understand that you are the same in quality but not quantity is the real meaning of bhakti yoga, because you have to have a relationship. The individual jivatma has to be individual and have a relationship. Just like when you're married, there is an idea, there's symbolism that talks about union of becoming one, the ring, and have different kinds of things in the wedding ceremony that connect the two together. Sometimes people put a lei together and connect each other, but it's coming together as one in will. You don't become the person, you don't become your wife, or your wife doesn't become you. There is a relationship going on, and this is what bhakti yoga, and the relationship entails that there is individuality but one common will. And this is what Jesus Christ was talking about when he said, I and my Father are one. The difference of individuality continues, otherwise there is no question of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means that the Lord is there, the devotee is there, and the activity of exchange of love between the Lord and the devotee is there. Therefore, the individuality of two persons is present in the Supreme Personality of God and in the individual person. Otherwise, there is no meaning to Bhakti Yoga. If one is not situated in the same transcendental position with the Lord, one cannot serve the Supreme Lord. To be a personal assistant to a king, one must acquire the qualifications, right? You know, to be able to do something, to be trustworthy. Thus, the qualification is to become Brahman, or free from material contamination. It is said in the Vedic literature, Brahmaiva san Brahma payati. One can attain the supreme Brahman by becoming Brahman. This means that one must qualitatively become one with Brahman. In attainment of Brahman, one does not lose his eternal Brahman identity as the individual soul. So you have to achinta beda beda tata. You are simultaneously one, but you are different. So you are one. You understand that the kshetra, the modes of material nature and the prakriti is not who you are. It's an energy of Krishna, but in true sense, you are Jivatma. You are spiritual in essence. Same in quality as Krishna. That is the sameness. That's what the sameness is. The one in will, the understanding who you are, and you have to. There's a purification process to get to that state before you can actually engage in true, pure devotional service to Krishna. So previously, you are engaging in sadhana bhakti, in the practice, service and practice, right? Because you have certain kinds of contamination, and the process itself is purifying. So you may not be engaging in pure devotional service, but it is purifying you. So therefore, you should be engaging it, because otherwise you can't return to this state of Brahman without doing that. Text 27. Brahmano hi prashtityam amrityam shavaya shacha shashvata tasya cha dharmasya sukha shaya kanti kasyacha. Brahmana, of the impersonal Brahma majority, he certainly, prashtita, the rest, aham, I am, amritasya, of the imperishable, avyayasya, immortal, cha, also, shashvatasya, of eternal, cha, and dharmasya, of the constitutional position, shukasya, of happiness, ayakanti kasya, ultimate, cha, also. Translation, text 27. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So people translate these kind of things, and then they come to this and they have to do mental gymnastics to get around this. When he says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. Not the impersonal Brahman is the basis of me, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. Purport. The constitution of Brahman is immortality, imperishability, eternity, and happiness. Brahman is the beginning of transcendental realization, the beginning. Paramatma, the supersoul, is the middle. The second stage is transcendental in transcendental realization. And the Supreme Personality of God, it is the ultimate realization of the absolute truth. So there's 3 steps and 3 forms of God realization. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Therefore, both Paramatma and the impersonal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. Just in the same way that if you have arithmetic is present within calculus. If you have algebra has arithmetic, but it doesn't have calculus. But calculus has arithmetic and algebra. So therefore, Bhagavan, present within Bhagavan, is the Paramatma and the Brahman effulgence. Therefore, both Paramatma and the personal Brahman are within the Supreme Person. It is explained in the 7th chapter that material nature is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Lord. The Lord impregnates the inferior material nature with the fragments of the superior nature, and that is the spiritual touch in the material nature. When a living entity conditioned by this material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises up to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. So this is what you can see in a lot of, there's a lot of religions and whatnot, and even the process of taking psychedelics. Sometimes people have a view of the Brahman effulgence, the white light. They see a great white light and a oneness. People sometimes have a near-death experience. They experience this Brahman effulgence. So this is the beginning of spiritual realization. It's not the end, but it is the beginning. So there is legitimacy to these experiences. It is a God realization, but it is not the highest God realization. When a living entity conditioned by material nature begins the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, he elevates himself from the position of material existence and gradually rises to the Brahman conception of the Supreme. This attainment of the Brahman conception of a life is the first stage in self-realization. At this stage, the Brahman realized person is transcendental to the material position, but he is not actually perfect in Brahman realization. If he wants, he can continue to stay in the Brahman position and then gradually rise up to the Paramatma realization, and then to the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there are great sages who've done such thing. There are many examples of this in Vedic literature. The four Kumaras were situated first in the impersonal Brahman conception of truth, but then they gradually rose to the platform of devotional service. One cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of Brahman, runs the risk of falling down. So this happens quite a bit, and the people actually also get very cocky. Many impersonalist so-called gurus, they go in, they think that they are the Brahman effulgence. They come down and I am descending, I'm God descending, and they tell their disciples that and teach them how to do that and how they can realize that they're God themselves. But if they have some kind of intelligence, they realize that, wait a minute, there is more. Even if you're teaching that, like her spiritual master heard Bhaktivedanta, heard chanting of Krishna's names, and was immediately attracted and thought, well, if I've supposedly understood the highest form of God realization and Brahman realization, or merging in the Brahman effulgence, but yet I'm still attracted to something, then it must be something more, the higher and more tasted. And so he learned from Bhaktivedanta that there was, and so there he left his practice of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and understood it for where it was in its place. Okay. One who cannot elevate himself beyond the impersonal conception of the Brahman runs the risk of falling down, and people do. They fall down. They have to come down eventually. In the street, and it fall down big time, sometimes really bad, because if they think that they're God, they think that, oh, I'm God, I can do whatever I want, I can just enjoy the material world. So they start having sex with all their followers, they have sex with children, they have sex with animals, they eat meat, they just like whatever goes, I'm God, I've already realized God, I'm all pure, which is the greatest offense. So that's a serious way of falling down. They'll probably be like pigs in their next life. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that although a person may rise to the stage of impersonal Brahman without going farther, with no information of the Supreme Person, his intelligence is not perfectly clear. Therefore, in spite of being raised to the Brahman platform, there is a chance of falling down if one is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. In the Vedic language, it is also said, Lasho vai shaha, Lasham hi evam labha labhanadi bhavati. When one understands the personality of God, the reservoir of pleasure, Krishna, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. The Supreme Lord is full in 6 opulences, and when a devotee approaches him, there is an exchange of these 6 opulences. The servant of the king enjoys on almost equal level with the king, and so eternal happiness, imperishable happiness, eternal life accompany devotional service. Therefore, realization of Brahman, or eternity, or imperishability, is included in devotional service. This is already possessed by a person who is engaged in devotional service. So just similar to the math concept. It's already there. It's already present. We don't need to try to strive to merge with the Brahman effulgence. That's already present. We want to have the relationship with Krishna. That is our ultimate goal. The living entity, although Brahman by nature, has a desire to lord it over the material world, and due to this he falls down. In constitutional position, a living entity is above the three modes of material nature, but association with material nature entangles him in the different modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Due to the association of these three modes, his desire to dominate the material world is there. By engagement in devotional service and full Krishna consciousness, he is immediately situated in the transcendental position, and his unlawful desire to control material nature is removed. Therefore, the process of devotional service, beginning with hearing, chanting, remembering the prescribed 9 methods for realizing devotional service, should be practiced in the association of devotees. So, key. The 9 practices of devotional service. We brought those up before. The first three are really important: hearing, chanting, remembering. We have other ones: making association, friends with Krishna, serving the deity. There's many others. We've come up with those before. But in the process, within the association of devotees, especially the pure devotee of Krishna, the spiritual master, but an association of like-minded people who are doing the same thing. This is a cultivation process. Gradually, by such association, by the influence of the spiritual master, one's material desire to dominate is removed, and one becomes firmly situated in the Lord's transcendental loving service. This method is prescribed from the 22nd to the last verse of this chapter. Devotional service to the Lord is very simple. One should always engage in the service of the Lord, should eat the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the deity, smell the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, see the places where the Lord has his transcendental pastimes, read of the different activities of the Lord, his reciprocation of love with his devotees, chant always the transcendental vibration, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and observe the fasting days commemorating the appearances and disappearances of the Lord and his devotees. By following such a process, one becomes completely detached from all material activities. One who can thus situate himself in the Brahma-jyoti is equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in quality. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of the 3 modes of material nature. Wow, so awesome. It's just like every chapter is just awesome. So we will continue with the read-through next time of chapter 15, which is entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. And we are last 3 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, really exciting. So let's chant a little bit as prescribed by our spiritual masters. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare you. next time.